Julius Randle just isn't right for New York. After a fantastic season last year, so far early on into this season, Julius Randle has struggled pretty tremendously. When you actually look at his numbers and stats, maybe they look pretty good and relatively similar to last year, but when you actually watch him out there on the court, you can clearly tell that Julius is nowhere near the level that he was playing at last year. But quickly before we get the video started, for those of you who may not know, I'm Juicy Sports, I make opinionated NBA content, and if you guys enjoy videos similar to this, please consider hitting that subscribe button, that like button, and that post notification bell. But anyways, let's get into it.
Oh yeah, I work with the medics. I'm about to get you injected. I got a couple connections so I can get you prosthetics.
Going into this season, the expectations for the Knicks were sky high. After a fantastic season last year, making it all the way to the 4th seed, and although they didn't necessarily end the season the way they would have liked, losing to the Atlanta Hawks in the first round 4-1, nonetheless, last season was certainly a success for the Knicks. And after the Knicks also brought in some fantastic players in free agency in Kemba Walker and Evan Fournier, that just raised the bar for the Knicks' expectations even more. But so far early on into this season, the Knicks as a whole have been struggling pretty tremendously. Currently on the year, they have a 22-24 record and hold the 11th seed in the Eastern Conference. And although the Eastern Conference certainly has gotten a lot better this year compared to where it was last year, this certainly has been a huge disappointment for the Knicks. Now, the reason the Knicks are struggling so significantly this year is due to a bunch of different factors. A ton of different players on their team are just not playing well whatsoever. But in my opinion, the biggest reason why the Knicks are struggling is their main player and their star player, Julius Randle, is completely not the same player this year as he was last. And there's a bunch of different reasons for why, but first just talking about his play on the court and what's different this year compared to last year. So let's first start talking about his three-point shooting ability. So last year, Julius Randle's three-point shot was one of his strengths. He was shooting over 40% from three, which is a huge improvement from the years past and basically his whole career. The fact that Julius Randle was able to hit so many three-pointers at such a high percentage really opened up the rest of his game and forced a defender to play much higher on him, just giving him the ability to easily drive all the way to the basket or pull up for a nice mid-range jump shot. It really helped out Julius's game significantly. But this year you can tell that Julius is just not confident with that three-point shot whatsoever. There's so many times where he passes up the shot, maybe he hesitates a little bit, then takes it, and then just completely misses the shot. And overall, you can really see this in his three-point shooting percentage, where this year he's only shooting around 31% from three, which is a major reduction from what he was doing last year. That's the first big issue with Julius Randle. The next big issue with Julius Randle is his mid-range shooting ability. Last season from that mid-range area, Julius was absolutely automatic. Whenever he took a mid-range jump shot, you can basically go on the other side of the court because more likely than not, it was going in. But so far early on into this season, similar to his three-point shooting ability, Julius Randle has struggled tremendously with that mid-range shot, and it's gotten to the point in some games where he's just completely not taking that mid-range shot. There's a bunch of times this season where it happened where Julius was wide open for a mid-range jump shot, but he didn't have enough confidence to take that shot, so he decided to drive all the way to the basket into a double or triple team and just put up a pretty bad shot. It's been pretty crazy how much confidence he's lost in his mid-range shooting ability, when it's basically been the best ability within his game, certainly last season, but also basically throughout his whole NBA career. But one thing that I do want to give Julius credit for, and something that he really hasn't regressed in, is his driving and finishing ability. This season, he still drives all the way to the basket very strongly and really overpowers whatever defenders in the paint. Julius does a great job of getting some N1 finishes once driving to the basket, and overall his driving and finishing ability is still very good. But another issue with Julius Randle this season, at least in my opinion, is his passing and playmaking ability. Now, his passing and playmaking ability within itself is certainly very good and very comparable to what it was last year, but the issue with it is at the end of the day, Julius Randle is a star player on the Knicks and is the guy on the Knicks that got paid a major contract this offseason. So when it really comes down to it, Julius really needs to assert himself and be that star player and score the major buckets for the Knicks. But too many times in too many games this season, Julius has really relied on his passing and playmaking ability way too much and relied on his teammates a little too much. When in reality, Julius Randle should be taking those big shots and really taking over more so for the Knicks this season. And I think the biggest reason why Julius Randle is struggling in all these individual metrics that I mentioned is due to his confidence. And really, as I mentioned before, I think it really comes down to that Hawks playoff series. He lost all his confidence there, and it's really having a carryover effect to this season, at least so far. Maybe there's always a chance he can turn it around, but so far early on into this season, it's been pretty clear that Julius Randle is not the same player this year as he was last year. But besides the technical issues on the court, there's also been some issues off the court as well, and the reason why I titled this video, Julius Randle isn't meant for New York. Now, of course, a few games ago, there was that saga with Julius Randle giving the thumbs down to the Knicks fans, which in my opinion isn't necessarily a huge issue, but at the same time it isn't a good look whatsoever. The fact that you're booing the fans that chanted MVP for you throughout the entire season last year isn't necessarily a good look. But as I mentioned, I don't really think it was as big of an issue as people made it out to be. But another issue that I want to mention that in my opinion means a lot more than just giving a thumbs down is the fact that Julius Randle hasn't been showing up to post-game interviews. Now I know the Knicks organization is the reason for that and they didn't want Julius Randle to go, but at the same time, for Julius Randle being the main guy in the team and the star of the team, you really have to take a leadership role and go to those post-game interviews if your team wants you to or not, and really answer the questions. You have guys like RJ Barrett, Evan Fournier, Mitchell Robinson, other guys in the team answering questions for Julius Randle, which is just a terrible look in my opinion. The main player on the team and the star on the team needs to answer all the questions when the Knicks are playing well, as well as when the Knicks are not playing well. And something that kind of piggybacks off this issue is on the court at times when Julius isn't playing well, he's not showing great body language and he's not really showing body language of a player that's a leader of a team. I just think there's so many different issues with Julius Randle on the court this season. I know it's only been one season. I just personally think there's so many different issues in terms of his actual play on the court, his actions off the court. I just think there's so many different reasons for why Julius Randle, in my opinion, might not be meant for New York. Now I know it's only been one season and you may say I'm just overreacting at this point, but you also have to keep in mind, as I mentioned before in the video, the first season when Julius Randle originally came to the Knicks, he also had a pretty bad season, and a lot of the issues that's persisting this season kind of also happened in his first season with the Knicks. So in my opinion, the fact that Julius hasn't played well for 2 seasons basically at this point, as well as all the issues and body language issues off the court as well, I just personally don't think that Julius Randle is necessarily built for New York at this point. Now of course I could be wrong, hopefully I'm wrong, but at least at this point that's what it appears to me like. Now I will say, I personally don't think the Knicks are going to trade Julius Randle before the NBA offseason at the very least. Unless something completely changes or the Knicks get a fantastic opportunity where they could trade Julius Randle away for a superstar player or a very good rookie player, I personally don't see the Knicks trading Julius before the offseason. But we'll see what happens. Hopefully for the Knicks and Julius Randle, they can turn things around, and for the Knicks turn their season around, and for Julius Randle also turn his season around. But anyways, let me know what you guys think in the comments. Do you think Julius Randle is meant for New York and maybe it's just a slow start? Or do you agree with me and think Julius Randle is not meant for New York and the Knicks need to trade him soon? But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you did enjoy it, check one of these other 2 videos popping up now, and until the next time, peace out guys.
Dosage. Oh yeah, I work with the medics. I'm about to get you injected. I got a couple connections so I can get you prosthetics. Hope you can't go around.